This fighter dominated for years with an unorthodox style nobody could solve. We didn't just beat him, we shut down the system that made him dangerous, and before the fight, we identified the exact patterns that would break him. Thomas Narkun, for people that don't know some feats he has, he was the longest reigning KSW champ in his weight class. He had a very high submission rate of 70%. He's dangerous everywhere, a well-rounded fighter, especially in scrambles. The system Thomas Narkun built as a fighter. He prefers using a long guard, where usually other fighters they'll prefer a high guard instead. They'll play it more safe, or fight hands down and rely on their reflexes. He uses a long guard more to control the range, to create frames when he gets attacked. He can often use this to shooting under for takedowns, or the long guard has his jab much more active, so he's ready to poke and then immediately shoot under. He can almost be like a turtle, and he uses it as a shell for his defense that can give opponents a lot of issues. He's mostly a grappler, but what throws opponents off a lot is he would blitz. Opponents are often too defensive, trying to defend takedowns, and then all of a sudden they get blitzed, they get rocked. It's one of his biggest strengths. He will often use this to set up his takedown attempts, distract them, hit high and then go low, or he overwhelms opponents, they panic, he can rock them. When they try to wrestle up, he can pounce on a submission. His grappling style is very opportunistic. He isn't a control-based grappler that will break opponents down. He's more of a jiu-jitsu, somebody that can end a fight in the blink of an eye. He is very strong off his back. He often can catch opponents off guard. Opponents can feel safe, usually in somebody's guard, but he's very quick with triangle chokes, wrapping up guillotines. They think they can get a break, but that's one of the places where he's most dangerous. He loves using his rear leg. He uses it to back opponents up or help set up his takedowns, especially his rear front kicks where he'll push opponents back and then try to shoot, or force them against the cage and then blitz. He's one of those fighters you should never trade with. His style is made for winning inside exchanges, or where opponents usually feel safe, that's where he thrives. Why very few were able to solve him? His long guard was the main issue. In MMA, it's not common, so a lot of people don't know how to attack it properly. The moment he frames out with his lead hand, or hides like a turtle in his shell, they don't know where to attack, what to do, so they end up not being able to do anything and they lose momentum. Opponents would usually try and approach him by outboxing him, but he's very sneaky with it because he can drop his long guard very quickly and then turn it into grappling exchanges. And he has a tendency to do a strong dip, which can look very weird because it can look like he's shooting under for a takedown, but then all of a sudden a counter comes instead, and this complements his long guard and makes his defense so much more awkward and hard to deal with. Opponents would overreact to his blitzes. They try and stand in front of him, try and counter back, where he could quickly just throw a combination and then shoot under. Or opponents would panic, he would chase them down and then rock them. His style is made to take advantage of fighters with bad composure, so oftentimes opponents would rush, trying to get back up to their feet. The things that made him so much more difficult to deal with, that made him hard to solve, was he could put pressure on opponents, jab them, back them up with his long guard. Opponents can rock him, they can drop him at times, take him down, they stay in his guard, they think they get a break, and then all of a sudden they're inside a submission and then they have to tap. This is how fighters like Muhammad Khalidov, he beat twice, who was on a huge winning streak and was a very good fighter. He drops him on the feet, he has success, and then all of a sudden he gets submitted. So opponents would oftentimes not know where to be, what range to be. Are they safe close range, long range? Are they safe in his guard, on the ground? And this made it so much harder to deal with him, because there would be no clear game plan on how to beat him. The patterns and weaknesses we spotted in his style. So we quickly noticed how important the long guard was for him as a fighter. The thing that really gave him success was that the long guard isn't as common in MMA, but what it does more, it's very good for grapplers to use because they can frame and then quickly shoot under once the opponent tries to close the distance or they want to answer back. And opponents would often try and approach him with the boxing, which makes it so much harder to deal with the takedown threat and the long guard because he dips. so we knew it would be much smarter to attack his legs. His long guard makes him naturally heavy on his front foot and his lead hand out, so it makes it much harder for him to check kicks. He prefers on countering them more in specific situations. We could see he would counter rear leg kicks in certain setups, but inside leg kicks he was having a very hard time defending, and he wasn't used to it. His fighting style prefers him being a lot more active. He preferred to start exchanges. His success in fights often come from blitzing first, or pressuring opponents with his rear leg, backing them up against the fence, and then forcing them into a dilemma, either defending his strikes or a takedown attempt. But if you kept him busy and poked at him at range, he was having a much harder time to start. To build momentum, he usually waits for his opponent to give a big opening, but as long as you play it safe, he's okay with it being a stalemate and getting hit from range, because he doesn't really like to force exchanges, even if he might be losing. The tendency of him dipping is one of his biggest strengths, but it can also be one of his biggest weaknesses, because he gets his head off the center line, but it opens him up more to get catched, because his frames aren't as disciplined, and he can give openings in his long guard. But once he exits exchanges, he can get caught. Once you realize his style depends on two things: his blitzers and his long guard not being attacked, the fight becomes much more simple, and you take away what makes him as a fighter. Now he can't get to use his favorite combinations, his favorite takedowns, and his technique goes out the window.